Novus, the new voice. Vox Novus, the new dimension. Vox Novus, thought and movement leaders who will share from their experience and offer tools to help us navigate our rapidly changing world. My name is Victor Furman. Welcome to Vox Novus, the new voice. How may we upgrade our communications, mindfulness, and connection with life to unlock personal power, certainty, and joy? My guest this week on Vox Novus, Lyon Folsom, says we may accomplish this by crafting soul statements. Corey has been a professional tracker, Aboriginal skills instructor, wilderness guide for newly sober people, and Vision Quest leader. After a spiritual soul awakening in 2009, Corey participated in Ipsalu, Source School of Tantra Yoga, Love Coach Academy, Tony Robbins, and other programs. As a certified NLP practitioner and relationship coach since 2012, he assists people from all over the world to increase the soulfulness, clarity, and ease with which they experience life. Corey's compassionate about helping people enhance their empathy and communication. His website is corerelationship.com, and he joins me this week to share his path and book, Soul Statements, a love coach's guide to successful communication. Please join me in welcoming to Vox Novus, Lyon Folsom. Welcome, Corey.
Thanks, Victor. Glad to be here.
So wonderful to have you with us today. Corey, as I shared in our introduction, your callings have included being a professional tracker, an Aboriginal skills instructor, a wilderness guide for newly sober people, and Vision Quest leader. Please tell us about each of these callings and how they shaped your path.
As a young person, I was really drawn to the woods, the forest, the rivers that I was lucky enough to have just right behind our house. So I could walk through a meadow to the woods, to a creek, to another meadow, to more woods, to eventually a river. And that's just where I wanted to spend all my time. And it led me to getting hooked up with this school that taught the Aboriginal living skills, which would be how ancient people got by day to day. So fire without matches, shelter just from your bare hands, tanning hides, edible plants, and that kind of thing. So I ended up being an instructor there for several years, and some of my closest friends are from that time. And so that was the Aboriginal living skills. And then somebody suggested to me I might want to be a wilderness guide. And with these newly sober people, the setup was to have very little equipment, just a blanket tied up with some string, a little tiny canvas sack with some food, a knife so we could, make digging sticks to dig a soft spot to sleep or dig up some onion bulbs or something. And so it was that Aboriginal living, pseudo living, with those skills that it seemed like a natural fit. So I did that for like 9 to 11 years, 9 full time. And that's where I got introduced to the 12 steps and the newly sober people who had been through loss and chaos. And we just learned how to be human with each other. And if there was a issue, to sit down and do what we can to resolve it.
And tell us about being a Vision Quest leader.
Folded into those programs, we would put our people on a Vision Quest, which at about day 19 of a 42-day program, we would set them off, with preparation and setup by themselves in a 10-foot circle. And they just had to stay there for 3 days and 4 nights. No food, plenty of water, no journal, no fire, no shelter, just a poncho to put over themselves if it rained. And so it was just so boring. And that's the idea, is you want to make it so boring. There's literally nothing to do except sit there and let your mind just go through all of the mundane, wearying, dumb stuff that our mind will do. And eventually we get tired, our mind gets tired and relaxes for a few minutes. And there's some insight, the true shining self of our soul that just all of a sudden sees the opportunity when the mind wears itself out to give you a few minutes of brilliant insight. And those few minutes of brilliant insight makes the 4 days, 3 nights totally worth it. And it just reconnects you with you and you with your higher power. So that was the way we did Vision Quest. There was also one other way, actually, where we would set them off 45 minutes apart on a remote dirt road somewhere. I mean, it was so remote that, I mean, we could see for sometimes 30, 40, 50 miles, and there were no lights,
Wow.
you know? And so they had to walk on this dirt road, no flashlight, really carrying nothing, and just walk the whole night. And we said, you know, you'll know when you get to the destination because we'll be there. There'll be a little fire and some breakfast. And we didn't tell them it was 20, 25 miles. Just keep walking is all we said. And that the same thing, the mind has something to focus on, which is the walking, which is making sure there's a hard surface under your feet. We would tell them if it feels soft, it means you're not on the road. So you need to kind of go sideways till you find it again. Mm. And it was the same thing. Your mind gets a task and you can consider larger questions and like that. So that was the way we did Vision Quest.
And what did your work as a wilderness guide teach you about relationships, intimacy, and the healing power of kindness?
Well, in the wilderness, there's constant unexpected things, whether that's an issue somebody's having in the group or the changing weather, like, oh my gosh, look at this giant mountain or this cliff we didn't know about. You know, it can get dark when you're not really ready for it. The seasons change and there's just unexpected things all the time. And so we learned to just work through frustration without giving into it, but just focus on solutions. And I also learned that people's differences that may be not so great in one situation can be a wonderful asset in a different situation. And so maybe somebody's a weak hiker and they're slowing the group down, but then when we're trying to solve some problem, they come up with some brilliant solution that nobody else would have thought of. And there was just no manual, there's no playbook. You just had to rely on each other and realize, hey, we're all allies and we're all frustrated. We're all hungry or tired or whatnot. And these obstacles, these frustrations just show us where we need to work, how we can be better, more skillful communicators and like that. And also there is these moments I can think back to where, you know, I'm out of water and maybe we're all thirsty, but somebody has maybe more water and they offer me some. And it's just so like, wow, you see that I'm hurting and you offer a kindness. And that just has such an impact, you know, bonding and feeling connected to each other. And so I learned A, kindness matters, and B, there's always a solution.
In 2009, you experienced what you described as a spiritual soul awakening. What happened and how did this unfold for you?
It was during a Tantra exercise, my very first Tantra workshop, and it was just simply sitting knee to knee with another person and eye gazing. And as I looked into her eyes, as she looked into mine, everything dropped away. And there was no other reality except this just soul, light, beauty connection. And something shifted. And I think back and I think I was just so deeply inhabiting that moment that it just felt like the air in the room went away and it was replaced with breathable joy. and there was just nowhere to go. It's like I had arrived at me, and I felt connected to my own center and so happy. And I didn't have to do anything. I was just that okayness, that total okayness with just being me and just being here and not having to do anything to be accepted and loved and content. So it really felt like it was so profound. It felt like it changed me on a cellular level, and I was never the same since.
I actually had a similar experience many years ago where an event that I was taking part in, I never felt part of the spiritual community. And someone came over to me and said, "You are meant to be here." And that changed everything for me. So I understand exactly
Nice.
what you're saying. You participated in a series of programs following your spiritual soul awakening. Please describe these and how they informed and developed your coaching practice.
I went to this program up at Harbin Hot Springs, and it was all about learning to love yourself, allowing the kind of intimacy where it's into me, you see, and just being open-hearted and present for the moment, for other people, for yourself. And for me personally, they said learning to love yourself starts when loving yourself even when you don't want to. And that was actually way too much of a leap for me. So I had to modify it for myself and start with self-acceptance. Like, oh, I accept that I did these things that I'm not proud of or happy with. And, it happened. And I can learn how to do it better. And so I started with that self-acceptance, and later it led into the self-love. But that's where I started. And I also took workshops in just communication, like nonviolent communication, conscious communication, and that gave me better tools to be really authentic to what my needs were, and to be able to share what my needs are in a given situation with more grace and more skill. And just to give you an example, one of the tools to do that is if something upsets me and I'm like, oh, especially if it's sudden, the best thing I can do is to offer love to my own heart, a little empathy on the inside, and go, you know what? I see that this is upsetting. I get it. It's like, and just offer a little salve to my own heart, a little bit of that gives you a little bit of time to go, how do I really want to respond to this? Versus just saying the first thing that my brain decides to spit out, which not necessarily helpful. So that kind of that concept of just slowing it down when things get heated or emotional is a wonderful tool.
In what way is your present work influenced by your Tantra background?
It's really influenced by the way I think about Tantra. It's essentially an attitude and also a practice of paying attention to the moment. So being present for what's going on with me, being present to what's going on around me, actual listening to if another person's speaking, and just being really as present as possible to what they have to say. And so there's I guess a built-in curiosity, and I like to say curiosity over critique. And so also the way I look at it, the more deeply a person inhabits the moment, the more they're being tantric. And so, and to inhabit the moment, slow down, look for wonder. I have a soul statement called, it says, living in wonder is a gift and a joy.
What inspired your latest book, Soul Statements, A Love Coach's Guide to Successful Communication, and what is a soul statement?
Certainly, yeah. I heard Tony Robbins say one time that our brains aren't designed to make us happy. They're designed to look for what's wrong. And what's wrong is always available, but so is what's right. And that really percolated in me. And I thought, oh, you know what? I have that unhelpful voice in my head, just like everyone else. And that concept of, oh, I can script in advance what to say in response to that voice, that unhelpful voice. So when it's saying, no, you can't do this, or there's no way, I can have a ready to go soul statement, something like, you know what, my soul knows what to do, or I have strength in my center. And so a soul statement is a present time reminder of what's true and good and resourceful about yourself. And so it's a way to calibrate your surface thoughts with who you really are, your inner knowing. And so I really believe that the answers are in our center. So my job as a coach isn't to figure out what someone else should do or not do, or what their answer should be. My job is to help them ask really good questions of themselves so that they uncover their own answers. And so the basic soul statement formula is to notice that you're having an unhelpful thought or attitude, and then declare the soul statement silently out loud. And the real power is when you feel the truth and the rightness of it. So I can trust my deep knowing to guide me. My body knows how to heal itself. And so then your next action, your next thought will be more congruent with who you really are, what you really are, and how you really want to be in this world. So that's a soul statement.
What's the source of that negative voice? Where does that come from, that negative voice?
Well, if I were to be completely honest with what I think, I would say it comes from the fact that we are all, it seems like we're so individualized, and that we're made in the image and likeness of the Creator, but we don't always feel, when we get born, we're like, hey, where's the Creator? I don't see him, that energy around it. And that kind of separation from our concept of God. And we can feel more alone than we really are. And I think as I personally grow in understanding, and I hope I always will be growing in understanding that, we're not really separate. It just looks like we are. Oh, and so that voice is that doubt of, are we really in this world all on our lonesome, and, just having to get by with our wits, and there's no allies or help to be found. We're just, life's a struggle, and then we die. And are we sure? Are we wondering about that? Maybe I won't make it. Maybe I'm not up to the task. And so that it just starts this little tape that runs around.
Is that programming coming from events that have transpired in our life, our childhood, et cetera, and up to the point where we're at right now?
I think it can exacerbate that if there's unhappy situations or events. It can reinforce it. Or, if we have better parenting or experiences that lead us to believe that we are connected with the greater spirit, then that can help quiet the voice a little bit.
There are so many wonderful poems and songs, such as Yusuf Cat Stevens' On the Road to Find Out, that remind us our answers lie within. How may a soul statement increase inner clarity and help us find those answers?
Yeah. Well, I'm a big fan of spending quiet time alone. And whether that's, some people find that just walking, strolling through their neighborhood or in the natural area. Some people find it in their workout space. Some people, sit and meditate, maybe in front of an altar. And I actually can find it body surfing, where I dive under the wave and I hold myself on the bottom and I just listen for the great silence and just still my own thoughts. And so there's this wellspring of knowledge of our own wisdom of why we're here and what we're about, that if we can stop thinking or stop paying attention to our thoughts for a bit, we naturally that naturally bubbles up. And so if I can spend a little quiet time, come up with a statement that's empowering and connected to my self-image and who I really feel like I am, that soul statement then can be brought out in times of distress or distraction or confusion to remind us, you know what? I'm stronger than my challenges. There's a place at my center where I can tune out everything that is not me. And my inner alignment is always available. So those kind of soul statements can bring us back to, you know what? There's greater forces at play. I'm not in this world to just work and struggle and then die, but where I'm here to, add meaning and contribute.
And that can take place as long as we're living and breathing at any time in our life.
Just so.
My guest is Lyon Folsom. His book, Soul Statements, A Love Coach's Guide to Successful Communication. Corey, please share with our listeners where they can get your book and find out more about you and your work.
Yeah, certainly. I have a website, corerelationship.com, and there's all sorts of stuff about my coaching practice, kind of how I work. There's probably a couple dozen blog articles I've written, and there's a page dedicated to the book, and there's a link to Amazon. There's a link to bookshop.org, and a person can always ask their local bookstore to order it.
And we'll be back with more of Corey after these words on the Om Times Radio Network.
The best of the holistic, spiritual, and conscious world. Om Times Radio. IOM FM. Om Times Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. Om Times, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Hello, I'm Sandy Sedgbeer, host of Om Times Magazine's flagship radio show, What is Going On? My passion is sifting through information, research, and innovations from new thought teachers, speakers, and researchers, pushing back the boundaries of what we know about life, energy, metaphysics, and the universe. I love shifting perceptions about who we are, why we're here, and how quickly impossible becomes normal when we open our minds, expand our awareness, and accept that the only limits that exist are those we place upon ourselves. So if you're the kind of forward-thinking, eager investigator of what lies beyond the current reality that most perceive, why not make a date to come play with me in the field of possibilities at 4 p.m. Pacific Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time every Thursday, and together we can discover what's really going on.
If I could be you,
and you could be me,
for just 1 hour,
if you could find a way
to get inside
each other's mind,
walk a mile in my shoes.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
We've all felt left out, and for some, that feeling lasts more than a moment. We can change that. Learn how at belongingbeginswithus.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
Steven.
Who said that?
Me, down here.
Ugh, what are you, a yellow booger?
I'm a banana slug, Steven.
What are you doing in my room?
I'm your sense of adventure. It's been a long time since we've had an adventure in the forest.
Mom took me to the forest last year.
I'm a slug, Steven. It took me a long time to get here.
You're right. I should get out.
Yeah, the forest is not that far away.
Hey, Mom!
Come to the forest where the more adventurous you lives. Check out discovertheforest.org for cool places nearby. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service and the Ad Council.
Back on Vox Novus, my guest this week, Lyon Folsom, his book, Soul Statements, A Love Coach's Guide to Successful Communication. Corey, one of the challenges many of us face is communicating our truths. How do soul statements improve open and honest communication?
Well, that's so common, Victor. And the thing is, when you have a soul statement, or maybe you have several soul statements, that it connects you to your value and it connects you to your values. And so the more I'm connected to my values, the more I'm able to remember who I am beneath circumstance or worry, and I can speak to what's really important. And so a soul statement such as my serenity increases, I can hold circumstance more lightly. And that's a way to just, again, calibrate the outer you to the inner you, and like an emotional postcard saying, you know what, here is where you stand. This is where you belong. And so, and sometimes I'll even say to that, when I hear that voice catastrophizing, I think to myself silently, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm thinking that again. And, or something like, you know what, I used to believe that. And what's actually true is, and then I give my brain a better message. You know, there is grit inside me. I'm stronger than my challenges. So that's how I use it. And this presence, this clarity of maybe what you're going to say or how you want to be is just developed by consistently feeling, demonstrating your integrity, your attention for just what's life is, as life is occurring in real time, and just being present for that. And so the soul statement reminds you what you're made of, shifts you into a better state, and you can just speak with more clarity. And so that's how it works.
How do we delineate between honest communication, open and honest communication, and communication that might be painful to someone?
Well, I like to do a little bit of setup and ask what the person maybe has the bandwidth for, or how open they are to hearing what other people's, maybe my experiences of them. So I could say, you know, hey, there's something I've been thinking about, or the way we've been interacting isn't working super great for me. Are you open to hearing about it? And you can kind of gauge how much they're attached to their own, you know, standard of self-betterment or whatnot, and kind of tune the dial to, you know, speak more generally or more specifically as the case may be. But you want to feel or just ask the other person how much they're interested in hearing the real stuff.
So honesty and kindness are not mutually exclusive.
That's right.
Please share with us the importance of mindfulness in all situations and the importance of being present.
Well, you know, mindfulness, I also think of it as really connected to a self-examined life. And so I'm mindful of how I speak to other people. I'm mindful of, you know, what thoughts are coming up. And one of the beautiful things about interacting with other people is they can be like the emotional weather vane of, you know, this is your impact on other people as they experience it. And so they can give that feedback, however skillfully or unskillfully they will. And because, you know, I'm an expert on what I meant to do or what I meant to say, but they're the expert on how it actually came out. And so that's need to know information so that I can understand how I am received in the world and how I'm perceived in the world. And so I want to know that. And so I can be in alignment with how I act and how the kind of person I think I am. And so, yeah.
And how do we present our authentic selves in that situation?
By say if someone says, hey, you know, I didn't really appreciate the tone in your voice, I might be able to say something like, oh, well, that's interesting. And then please allow me to try again, or let me redo that. So then I can say maybe with a different tone, or or different phrasing. And so you want to share what you need to share, but you don't have to be harsh. And other people will let you know if it feels like it's too harsh to them. I'm not the person that gets to decide, well, I thought that, sounded just fine to me. If it didn't feel fine to them, that's their truth. And that's what really matters.
And hopefully and energetically within the context of that conversation, they will open to the same thing that you're opening to.
Yeah. And that's where, I think curiosity goes a long way. And I think it's an actual skill to hold a little bit of tension, meaning that if I want to say, oh, this is how I feel slighted in some way, and I want to, just quickly, it feels bad in my body. I want to quickly send that out to somebody else, to, preferably the person that I think caused the tension. A lot of times it's better to say, you know what, I'm going to be a better container. I'm going to hold a little bit of tension, and I'm just going to be interested in what their perceptions are, and maybe ask about their motivation. Hey, what did you mean by that? Or, I heard what you said, but I'm not sure I understand what you're saying. And just check it out, listen, and say, I'm just wondering how you formed that opinion, or what makes you think or say that. And then at some point it might be appropriate to say, well, this didn't maybe sound super great to me. Are you open to hearing, my experience of what just happened?
I had a wonderful teacher who used to say, listen twice, speak once.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so
Right.
It makes sense.
That's it. 2 ears and 1 mouth. Listen twice, speak once. You share that daily rituals and routines should align with our visions and our goals. How may we connect these?
Well, we have a self-image of who we think we are showing up as. And also we have, things we want to accomplish. And these everyday routines, I think it's a good thing to give a quick examination and say, is this or that really moving me toward what I want or how I want to be? Am I moving the needle in the right direction? And so, or like say there's a day, just as an example, somebody says, well, I'm going to be stronger. I'm going to do 10 push-ups every morning, no matter what. And if you don't do them, it's like, oh, I didn't keep this little promise to myself. And maybe people like me, how I think of myself, people like me keep their promises. Well, but if I'm not doing that, then there's this incongruency. So you want to do things that you will do consistently, that will kind of align you with your self-image. And I like to say self-care is soul care. So if I'm doing the things that are good for me, that are creating self-betterment, then all to the good. And the soul statement, sometimes that I'll tell myself if I'm doing something that's difficult, like a difficult exercise, I'll say to myself, I'm doing this as an act of love, meaning I'm making myself stronger or better in some way. And, as we apply a practice here and a tool there, at some point, we're no longer practicing. It's just our habits become who we are. I like the soul statement. My self-care allows me to be more present. And so that time that we spend bettering ourselves. It's not lost. It's not, I don't think of it as wasted or lost time, cultivating our own spirit, however that might look.
When I take my morning shower every day, I use it as an opportunity not only to clean my body, but to clean myself and clear myself of anything that I'm holding on to that might be hurtful to me. Whether it be something that happened with another individual, a disappointing situation. Every morning I wash it away and I start fresh. That's an idea of what you're talking about, right?
100%. That's wonderful. And so, yeah, so a soul statement that might really anchor that in could be something like, my cares are washing away with the water, or what I'm doing right now is cleansing me at every level.
One of my personal challenges was running around and caring for everyone else and not taking care of myself. How can soul statements help busy people improve their self-care?
Well, when you're saying a soul statement, my inner knowing is available to me. I'm bigger than any complaint. Then, if we're not acting in accordance with that, well, then there's this incongruence. And so, I have a client who, I've said all sorts of soul statements during our talk, and I have a client who does what many people do, is she just has one that just is the universal for her and just applies to anything. And so that would be, I am enough. And so if you just remind yourself, wait a minute, I know what I was just thinking, and the truth is, I am enough. And so that kind of reorientation, a little bit of empowerment in the moment, it allows us to then act in accordance with that. And so we're able to maybe hold in a little tension, breathe love in instead of blurting out the first thing that comes that we want to say. And that, I like to say that being uncomfortable is okay. Reacting badly is not okay. And so the soul statements connect us to that more empowered self that's able to say, I can just be, I'm okay, I'm enough. I don't have to react badly just to make a point or try to convince somebody of that they just slighted me in some way. And so it gives us that space and that time to just listen a little more, be a little more curious about the other person, and just feel okay, even when maybe perhaps before we would have felt like we had to just act.
You offer a fabulous not to-do list in soul statements, not a to-do list, but a not to-do list. What are some of the not to-do statements, and how may readers create their own?
I know for me, my enemies, a lot of them start with S. So sugar, sloth, but also some of my saviors start with S, like sleep, and so, or soul time or self-care. And so that not to do list is those things where just, I know it isn't good for me. And so I had for most decades of my life what I would term as a sugar addiction. I was always, popping a little gin or some other little sugar thing. And at some point, I just realized I'm better than that. I want to have less allergies. And when I stopped, it was not so much a decision, like I'm going to, not overly do sugar forever, but it was more like a stand. like a position that I occupied, where my feet were planted in a standard, and it just, that was it. I had my lance in the ground and my line in the sand, and so I just, this isn't who I want to be, and that was that.
And you also offer a way of saying no by saying yes.
Right. And I'm a big fan of yes and. So if somebody comes up with some proposal, I might, maybe I don't want to do it in the way they're describing. I would say something like, yeah, that sounds really cool. And I don't think I could participate at this time. Or, if it was a different week or a different month or whatever, I might be a yes, but right now I'm a no. So,
My guest is Corey Lyon Folsom. His book is called Soul Statements, A Love Coach's Guide to Successful Communication. We'll be back with more after these words on the Om Times Radio Network.
Humanity Healing International is a small nonprofit with a big dream. Since 2007, HHI has been working tirelessly to bring help to communities with little or no hope. Our projects are not broad mandates, nor are they overnight solutions, but they bring the reassurance that no one is alone and that someone cares. To learn more, please visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
Imagine yourself being transported to India, to the banks of the Ganga and an ashram in Rishikesh. Visualize that you are welcome to satsang with an American sannyasi who shares the wisdom of her guru. Your visualization has manifested. Join Sattvi Bhagawati Saraswati for inspiration and transformation every Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern on Om Times Radio.
Grab a cup of tea or a glass of wine and tune in for Inspired Conversations with publisher Linda Joy on Tuesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern. Linda creates sacred space for leading female luminaries, empowering authors, heart-centered female entrepreneurs, coaches, and healers. A soulful venue where guests openly share the fears and obstacles they've overcome, wisdom and lessons learned, and the personal journey that led them to the transformational work they do in the world. Inspired Conversations to empower you on your path to authentic, soulful living.
More than 24 million Americans have an autoimmune disorder, and that number continues to grow. I'm Sharon Saylor, and I'm one of those 24 million. To put that number in perspective, cancer affects about 9 million and heart disease up to 22 million. That's why I've brought together top experts and those thriving regardless of their diagnosis to bring you the latest, most up-to-date information. Join me, Sharon Saylor, Friday night, 7 p.m. Eastern, for the Autoimmune Hour on Life Interrupted Radio to find out how to live your life uninterrupted.
So I'm a cat, and I just moved in with this new human. And she's got this little toy she's always playing with, all day long. Tap, 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 bloop, bloop. She can't put it down. There it is. Oh, and get this. She even talks to it. Last week, she asked it for Chinese, and guess what? Egg rolls showed up. Like magic. Humans have cool toys.
A person is the best thing to happen to a shelter pet. Be that person. Adopt. Brought to you by the Ad Council and the ShelterPetProject.org.
Back on Vox Novus, my guest this week, Corey Lyon Folsom, his book, Soul Statements, A Love Coach's Guide to Successful Communication. Corey, how do soul statements make us more empathic partners, coworkers, and friends?
Well, as in the process of discovering what our soul statement or soul statements may be, is a practice of spending a little time, whether that's journaling or just being still and considering, who the deeper me is, or allowing enough stillness to where that bubbles up and it, our heart or our spirit says, hey, this is it. And so feeling the deeper you is really a way of, I like to think of it as filling up your emotional and spiritual well. And so I have friends who we might even, we have that language. So we might say, like going back to our original thing we just talked about, which is, somebody has a proposal and one of us might say, yeah, that sounds like a good thing, or that's very interesting to me. And, my well is only about half full right now. And so I'm going to be a no until I, boost that up. And so, there is a place at our center that each one of us where we can tune out everything that's, like, I like to say, everything that's not me is at my center. It's only me. And so if I can go back to there, I can feel who I am without any context or of the world. Then I'm like, oh, that's what I'm made of. And so the well gets a little more full. And if we have a regular practice of filling up our well, and that's all to the good, and we can then speak from a more place of empowerment and power and clarity and integrity. But it begins with some quiet time with our own spirit, connecting to who we really are.
You write about living in the shallow end as suffering. What does this mean?
Well, I'm not a somebody who won't do small talk, or that's its own pleasure. But I'm also the type of person that is interested in depth and realness and meaning. And when we can have conversations that are about deep things, that it charges me, it fills me up, and it makes me feel like, wow, there's a contribution that I can make to make real changes for another person, that they want. And so if we never dip down, then to me, it's just, what am I doing here? I mean, I'm here to make deeper contributions, not just, live my life and make a paycheck and go to sleep and do it again. But I'm very much attached to real contribution, real moving the needle forward for myself and for others.
Many people have difficulty reconciling sexuality with spirituality. How do you address this?
Well, the one way I think about that is the same creator who made your mind made your body. Well, if we accept that, then, well, my body has parts we usually don't talk about. and we can't say, well, the creator didn't make those parts in just only these ones. Well, it's all part of who we are and the package that we arrive with. And in Tantra, we learn to hold sexual union as a holy sacrament. I like to think of sex as an acronym. So SEX meaning sacred energy exchange. And I also have that concept that we each have a beloved that dwells within. And sometimes someone who's really connected to that beloved, that beautiful, radiant heart that's awakened and powerful, there's this ability we have to then, it's almost like the flame of one person's heart can actually, like a candle to a candle, light the flame of another person's heart. And we're all capable of so much. Like every woman is radiant when inhabiting her joy. and every man is compelling when in touch with his deep clarity. And I like the soul statement, my center informs me as I love my partner, or I have a beloved that dwells within. And so I think another important tantric concept is having a sacred contract to love and to loving. And so that's a beautiful thing, because then if time goes by and I'm not acting in a loving manner, I'm like, oh, I can remember I have a contract to loving and to love itself. And so then I have to realign how I'm acting to be back in congruence with, that contract, who I really think of myself as.
You offer a wonderful blessing practice in soul statements. Please share that with us.
It's actually an ancient Hawaiian practice of just offering. It's similar to offering loving kindness, but you're just offering a blessing to anything that captures your attention. Like, wow, I get to travel on these highways that took a lot of energy and effort and money and planning for a whole bunch of people to make that happen, to create this highway that I just get to cruise along at 65 miles an hour and not think about. And if that thought occurs to me, I can just offer a silent blessing to all the beings that contributed to making this highway, or this chair I'm sitting on, offering a silent blessing to, wow, somebody conceived it, somebody created a factory, somebody, got the materials, and it all got put together without me being there, and here I am getting to use it. And that's a wonderful thing. And it's like, oh, a blessing to all those people, and a blessing to the air itself, or anything that I can think of. It's just somehow opens my heart and my perception, my sense of the world, and I realize the effect is I am surrounded by blessings and things I benefit from that I had no effort in producing. And so at one time, on one hand, it makes me feel a little bit small and insignificant, but at the same time, it can make me feel like, wow, I am the beneficiary of so much amazing energy. That what a beautiful thing. And I can move through and make my own contribution.
It's another extension of gratitude.
100%.
Tell us about, with each chapter in the book, you offer a journaling exercise. What does journaling do?
Well, I love journaling. And to me, journaling unlocks this spirit water, that, like, this bubbling up of what's really inside us that maybe we didn't have contact with when we're just thinking through whatever's happening in our day. But if we sit down and we start journaling, that the unexpected happens. Like, oh, I didn't expect to write that. I wonder where that came from. And so it's a way to contact things that are underneath our normal everyday thinking. It just, so I'm a big fan of journaling. And when I would have the newly sober people in the wilderness, I would have them every day go off for an hour. We'd maybe stop in the middle of the day, have a little lunch, and then it's like, all right, everybody go find a place to be alone, and I'll give a yell when it's time to come back. And I would have them bring a journal and write at least a page in it. And that was just so useful. And I've just kept that up for myself.
What would you like readers to take away from Soul Statements?
You know, Victor, I think if I were to encapsulate it in one statement, I would say you can learn to call up the best part of you in a moment. And maybe another one would be the next right action is obvious when you're connected to your value and what you value.
Absolutely. My guest, Corey Lyon Folsom, his book, Soul Statements, A Love Coach's Guide to Successful Communication. Corey, one more time, please share with our listeners where they can get your book and find out more about you and your work.
The website, corerelationship.com. It has it all. It's all there.
And that's spelled C-O-R-E, correct?
Correct. C-O-R-E, and then relationship, all one word.
And of course, they can get the book on Amazon and all places where they get their books. And especially, let's patronize our local bookstores. Corey, thank you so much for joining us and sharing this wonderful wisdom with us today.
My pleasure. It's been fun, Victor. You've been great.
And thank you for joining us on Vox Novus. I'm Victor the Voice Furman. Have a wonderful week.